What is up, everybody? Welcome back here to the Deborah YouTube channel. Every Saturday, when I have time, we're going to be diving into some mocks. Today, we're doing a Dynasty mock. So let's get into it. Let's kind of talk about the parameters of this. And as it goes, you guys can ask me questions in the comments. You got trade questions, all of that. This is a 12-round Dynasty mock. This is tied in premium 1.5. Third round reversal. So when we're looking at this is the idea that, when you get into the, your first two rounds, it goes back to the 12 spot. So this is really common for Dynasty drafts now. It's one of those things that's definitely new to the format the last couple of years, and people are interested to see where does that draft spot go, right? So I'm kind of just going to be talking about this overall. This is a very fluid conversation. So if you have comments, all my YouTube subscribers out there, people that jump in, jump in, start asking questions, start going over the draft board. I'm going to be kind of showing you guys as it goes what that draft board looks like, just so you can get an idea of like, hey, if you're in a startup, what does it look like right now? Rookies are included in this as well. So this is pretty common when you're looking at kind of where these guys are going for the most spots. Josh Allen, Mahomes, Hurts tend to be kind of the guys when we're talking about that. Now, Hurts is the one that has interesting value right now. He's all across the board. You either love that guy or, you're looking at trying to pivot off of him, maybe to get to Stroud. I would say this is maybe the latest I've seen Stroud in some of these startups. I have seen Stroud go as high as 103 before. So he is that one guy that when you're looking at it, like, hey, could possibly be the outlier here overall. But when you're looking at that, Jefferson going at 104 is an interesting it kind of pick there. I think that with Jefferson and with that value that you have, can you pivot off of that? So that's going to be interesting to watch him build his team. And I love that because it's going to see, okay, what quarterbacks are going to be there, right? When you're looking at Stroud and Herbert going in there. But this is pretty much it. This is really what you're looking at in these startups. Now, when it gets fun is about that 110 to 112 mark. Now, you have to remember it is 3-hour reversal. So when you're thinking of like, all right, how are you going to build? I think that's where it gets fun, where it could get interesting. I know JC on here, when you're looking at it, he could be one of those guys that maybe he looks at going youth here. Marvin Harrison Jr., maybe Caleb Williams and those guys in this draft. So we have Chase going at 110, and that's generally speaking where he's going, and CD right behind him. Now, I caused some shitstorm. I know you'd be surprised on Twitter because of the cesspool that it is. And for me, even as a Dallas fan, I love CeeDee Lamb. I was a huge CeeDee Lamb 2 or 3 years ago, and the spreadsheet warriors were talking about T. Higgins being better than him. But I have a hard time smashing that draft button for CeeDee Lamb over Jamar Chase. I think Jamar Chase is more talented. I love CeeDee Lamb. I love the offense and the scheme. Obviously, I watch him every weekend as a Dallas fan. It's just hard for me to really press that button. I could get it. I understand it from a PPR perspective. I understand it from a target perspective. But there's some crazy narratives going out there right now about Jamar Chase. And I think there's a buy window. I really do think that there is a buy window out there for him. And as you notice, what we're going to be really talking about too, kind of as the teams get built, right? So the biggest thing is how do these teams get built and the player builds. We were on the Dynasty show on Thursday. Me and Leo Pasiga, I always mess up that name. Me and Leo were on there, and we were talking about, how to build your Dynasty teams. What does it look like? Productive struggle. How does that look? And so I'm going to be interested as we kind of get into this. Hey, did some guys build for that productive struggle? You're going to see there. Like, I love that start with Caleb and Amon-Ra. That could be one of those areas that you're looking at. That's a productive struggle. Now, with 3-round reversal, you could be a little bit more aggressive, I think, with getting a little youth, because you can really kind of target someone in that third round at the 301 that you wouldn't have a shot on the back end, right? So there is value there. I do want to talk about, as you're looking at this, when you're going into that, recency bias is a hell of a drug. It is a hell of a drug, right? When we're talking about kind of what we see there, especially with Jamar and CD and those guys there. Was watching the Leo conversation when I saw this start. Yeah, I mean, we had a really good conversation about how do you build, what is productive struggle builds at, and then how to be fluid in your draft, right? Like, that's the one thing I was talking about with Dynasty startups. Now, obviously, there's no trades here. I will say this, with trades, one thing that I've seen definitely is a theme. Everybody wants to move back, right? And it is becoming extremely hard in Dynasty startups to move back because the value is not there. And actually, there's pretty much a set price, right? You're looking at like a second, a third, maybe a 25 first or something like that, depending on where the league's at. But it's pretty set now. So just moving back, you really got to have to adjust your strategy because everybody wants to do that. And moving up doesn't really make sense either unless you're getting – the only way I'm moving up is if I can get that QB2, right? That guy where, hey, I'm going up there. and grabbing that QB2. I don't necessarily know if I'd be willing to move up and grab that one of those elite wide receivers. Maybe, probably depending on the price. So maybe out there moving out has become not bad lately. So that could be one thing that's happening too, is because everybody wants to move back. The prices have dipped a little bit. But to me, I am definitely moving up for that QB2, right? If I can move up, like I'm sitting there, Anthony Richardson falls to 109. If I can move up and grab him at the 109, I'd probably consider doing that, right? So if I can get an elite price, elite quarterback too, to pair him with one of those top 5 guys there. Now, I feel like that profile picture, you need to change that profile picture to something more relevant. You look like a pastor, JC. What are your thoughts with Bijan and Brees to go in there at the beginning of the second? Are they a tier above the running backs you want to go in there? I don't mind the way they build. Like, I love Richardson Hall start. I think that's a really fair value with what you're getting in terms of both those guys. I am pretty, I'm a very anchor running back guy. I don't mind going anchor running back here. I will say in the startup that I'm in right now, in terms of like looking at who's out there, it was hard for me when I was looking at, okay, who do I grab as my running back one? I almost went CMC, but I waited 2 rounds later and got Devin Achane. So, I do think there's value in those rounds there. I think Bijan and Hall going there is fine. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of build around them, especially Renee, who doesn't have a quarterback yet in Superflex. But when you're thinking of like, running backs that you can go there. I mean, after that, Nakua, I think that when you're looking at like Nakua sitting there, with the quarterback sitting on the board, I think there is a tier break, right? After Caleb, you have Lawrence and Prescott and Love and those guys. Some people love Love. Like Jordan Love is that guy for a lot of people out there. And they really, really like that idea of where like kind of he can be that dominant QB, probably 7 to 10 range, but be that QB1 for you. But I think that's a perfectly fine spot for those running backs to go. Gibbs too. I think Gibbs in the second is aggressive, but I love him pairing with Hurts. I do want to talk about the QBs too. When you're looking at that and you're seeing it, like Kyler Murray to me at the end of the second to pair with Allen, that would be a dream start. Fields with Mahomes, kind of a good start there too, right? Because, and I will say in some dynasty startups that I've seen, Kyler's going a little early. It depends how sharp your league is. So if you're drafting with sharps and guys that play the format really well, I think they understand the value Kyler brings, and you're not getting him at the back end of the second. I've seen him probably go at like the 201, 202, 203 based on the ADP there. But that's part of that kind of that value there. Now, Burrow and T. Law is a good start. Yeah, I think that Trevor Lawrence is one of those interesting QB2 pieces. So the interesting part about it, I like getting Trevor Lawrence as a QB2 if I could pair him with a Burrow who can be a top 5 guy, right? Or a Stroud. So I paired Lawrence in one of my leagues with Richardson. Give me the upside with Richardson. I'll take the shot there, right? His rushing upside, everything there. And then maybe give me that solid floor with Lawrence. Maybe he'll never be a top 7 guy. Maybe he's not going to be that outcome. But if he can be that QB12 with some upside, with some pieces around him, I think he's a fair value right now. And then I think the question goes like, would you rather have Lawrence in the second or Purdy in the third? Right? I think that is like, do you believe in Purdy enough? I would probably lean draft capital with Lawrence and understanding that their team's building around him, whereas Purdy is more of like Shanahan's guy, right? Like that's one of those things that I think is kind of interesting there when you're kind of looking at it and going through it. Now, when you see this, and this is a good question, I wanted to bring it up. It's not just startups either. I've had conversations with rookie drafts about moving back from a premium pick, and the line I keep hearing is X. I don't have him moving from Y to X is worth the price, which is fine. I think it is kind of seeping into it, right? So in dynasty startups, rookie moving back, it is getting harder to do because people are getting smarter. This format, people are very, getting very, very smart there. Then you're looking at here, AJ Brown is a crazy value for me in the late third. Yeah, AJ Brown is one of those guys is if you really like him and you believe in that talent and you think you're going to go after him, like AJ Brown is one of those guys that you could definitely target right now because he is, I saw him as wide receiver 13 in Dynasty and some recent rankings that I saw there. Now let me make all the board. So when you're talking about my picks here, you got Allen and Murray. So the question is like, how do you build out, right? What do you like? What are you looking for here? Now in tight end premium, I'm going to take Trey McBride. I think that's a fine pick in terms of where that value's at. Then you look at running backs. I'm going to go kind of off the board here. I'm going to take Jonathan Taylor. So what I'm going to try to do is build through, hey, that tight end premium, give me the possible top 3 tight end, and I'm going to go anchor. I'm going to wait on wide receiver. And that's not really a a lot of things that you do in terms of like how you build your team, but I want to kind of see how some of those veteran wide receivers later will look. And this is kind of a win now team. This is a team that I think I could probably put together here. But give me some leeway here. I'm trying to stream and draft here. Now, I agree with the anchor running back approach. That was a point we're talking about. Also, thank you. I appreciate it. You're making me nervous out here with your Bible study approach. But when you go through, let's talk about some of the rookies. Let's get into some of them. So Caleb Williams, 112, boom. You're looking at what quarterback, when you're thinking of where he's going in terms of like rankings, 109 is exactly where he's going. Caleb Williams at the 109. Then, we flip it around and Marvin Harrison Jr. at the 202. So, wide receiver 5. Okay, that's fine. That's generally speaking where he's kind of going in that range. And then you flip it around and you're kind of looking at kind of where are these other rookies going at. And just kind of give you an idea. 301 for Neighbors is a very, very solid kind of pick when you're looking at kind of the rookie value and what he has there. And then, hey, flip it around to Jaden Daniels finally at the 405. That's pretty good value. I like what Adam's building there. Lamar, Dak, A.J. Brown, and Daniels, you just take best player available. If Daniels is able to hit that rushing upside, you have to really like that. And then Bowers going at 407. Pretty good value, too. If you think Bowers can be that next tight end in terms of that, he's going to come in probably as dynasty tight end 2 or 3 in that range. So not bad in terms of where those rookies are going there. I think the big outlier to me, Tyreek Hill going in the second round. So, Matt here is building a juggernaut win now team when you look at it just overall, right? Herbert, Hill, McCaffrey, Andrews. Like that is a win now squad. So I love when I see these type of builds kind of playing out. And you can kind of see in real time how it's going to progress, right? If you go into a draft, the one thing we always talk about on the Dynasty Show with Leo is being fluid, right? So I'm sitting here, I'm looking at the board. And for example, Jay's well here, sitting here with Lamb, Harrison, Wilson. Heavy wide receivers. Then London, boom. And London, I think, is a good value in the 4. So that's interesting. That's generally speaking, how people are building their dynasty leagues right now is just heavy wide receiver. But when you're looking at overall too, there is different, ways to kind of build out a roster here. I like the Burrow, Lawrence, Waddle, Ayuk side. I think that's a very solid. If Waddle can kind of assume that position, maybe Ayuk is your wide receiver 1. Waddle could be a very strong wide receiver 2 there. Now let's get into some questions. And again, if you have some questions or thoughts on the board, as you're seeing them, go ahead and drop them. May is mostly 103, 104 in the rookie draft, but hasn't gone to startup yet after 5 rookies have gone off the board. Yes. So that's a good point. We see May going at 412. JC is building a definitely productive struggle team here with Caleb, Amon, Neighbors, May, Odunze. He has never met a rookie he doesn't love. And I think that's one of those things that you see in dynasty startups. When the board is out there, it is hard to take maybe some of these rookie quarterbacks, right? Because, we've seen the Malik Willises. We've seen these guys fall off. The Mac Jones even, Trey Lance's. All these guys, Justin Fields and Lawrence to an extent, right? When their value is it. We're expecting them to be first-round picks. Now we're really seeing them kind of dip a little bit. And you're seeing that with May. So this is also why we do mocks a little bit. I think just to see kind of what the dynasty value of these guys are, who's willing to take a shot on these guys, but also you can kind of create a rookie board where the value is at, right? Bowers going ahead of May in tight end premium. So if that's the case, then, maybe you can move in your tiers. If you have your tiers out there for your rookie drafts to kind of see it. I think it's fascinating, right? I don't know what my guy Jay's well doing. He's taking Tank down. He's taking every wide receiver that I wanted. So that kind of pisses me off. Are we sure there's a 2.5 startup rounds of difference between Williams and Daniels? There's a lot of talk out there with Caleb Williams. Luckily, I have a full-time job and I couldn't get involved in the drama that was going on yesterday in terms of questions being asked in him. The one thing I will say about Caleb, I think he does have elite upside. For me personally, when I'm looking at where he possibly could go, if he goes to Chicago with Waldron, I love that offense. I love that offense. I think it's going to fit in perfectly. Look at what they did with Geno Smith, right? And I think Geno Smith's terrible. I've never been a Geno Smith guy. Sorry if you're a truther out there. But if he is able to make him relevant in fantasy and looks like a kind of a playoff quarterback, Caleb should be okay. I have more concerns where May and Daniels will go. If they go to the Commanders, I think that franchise, even with new ownership, there's a lot of muck in that franchise, right? Can they build around him? What does that look like? New England, I'm really not on board with New England. Many have called me a hater in terms of what they've been building with their staff. I don't love that staff. I think that staff is less than, ideal. I think it's fine, but will they be able to build around those guys if they go there? A guy like Jaden, those type of guys. I think that's the biggest question mark I have with the quarterbacks. So yeah, I think the 2.5 startup round difference is more about situation and what he can be, and the value there. But I can see from a rushing standpoint with Daniels. I do think Daniels. I think Daniels might drop a little bit more than what we think too. I think that we could see a Daniels dip. I think the JJ McCarthy stuff is real out there for those of you that have been kind of paying attention to that. And just kind of the fact of like, if JJ really goes top 5 in those areas, one of these quarterbacks is going to fall. Which one is it? It's going to be the guy that, played 5 years in college, had they really develop, has erratic kind of, accuracy, mid-level. Is that Daniels? It could be, right? So I think that's the question we got to go through ourselves. Now, I'm sitting on the clock here, don't have a wide receiver yet. So I took Allen, Murray, McBride, and Taylor. You know what? I'm probably just going to do it because I guess he's become my guy now. Jackson Smith-Njigba is my wide receiver 1. Just going to take a shot there in terms of like his value and where he's at. And again, when you look on the board too, with the quarterback still there, you're really kind of wondering kind of where that value is going to be. This is a tough one. You have Zay Flowers on the board, Diggs, Reed, kind of where my wide receivers are at. Don't love a lot of the rookies in this point. When you're looking at some of the best rookies, Franklin, the combine's going on right now. Franklin's a little smaller than what we would hope. Brian Thomas measured pretty well there. But I don't want to really rewind, rookies there in terms of that value. But I'll go Zay. I'm going to go just 2 sophomore wide receivers in that range. Almost went Hawkinson. I almost went exactly what he just did there with Kincaid and Hawkinson. So he was kind of reading my mind. But I'm going to go the wide receivers. Go young there. Would have done that. I would have brought Hellfire. I don't know. I can't be a fake guy here in terms of JSN is one of those things where I just believe in his talent. I think that he is a very talented wide receiver. I think that he can take over that Lockett role and just earn targets. Like the JSN thing to me in PPR is that his ability to earn targets is going to provide value. And if you can get JSN in the 5th or into the 5th or 6th round, I think that's worth the shot, right? I think that is there. I know some people love Jaden Reed, who's still on the board. Debo, maybe not Debo, but Diggs sitting there is an interesting pick. Evans, if he moves on. But I do think there's a tier. I do think that there's a tier there. I can't pass off Hawk in the 6th. That's the thing. So with Hawkinson, I don't know if he's coming back to like week 10, 11, right? I think he's 27, if my math serves me right. So the question is like, will he be able to, elevate his game again? What does the quarterback situation look like? So the biggest thing for me with Hawk is like, what is that quarterback situation going to look like? And will he be the wide receiver 2 on that team? Or is it Addison going to ascend? I think there's a lot of question marks around that, but I do think 6th round's perfect. I almost drafted him in the 6th round too. I think that's a good value. If you could build around him and plug him back in when he comes back in tight end premium, that's a good value. I think that's a good play there, right? And I think the thing with premium too to look at, especially tight end premium, really these guys can be your wide receivers and flex, right? So this is a 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 3 flex starters, right? Super flex as well. So when you're looking at that perspective, these guys you can just plug and play. And I do think that I saw an interesting thing. I was on some forum. I don't know where I was at. Maybe Football Guys forum for like 80-year-olds, or I was somewhere where there was some older guys talking, and they were saying that tight end premium is done. It's over, because when they look at tight end premium, they're saying that really there's elite guys all over the place now. There's 7 or 8 guys that they feel like they can plug in every week. If you go bully tight end, Kincaid, Hawkinson, no one else has 2 tight ends on the board here. That could be a strategy as you're sitting there and maybe some tight ends are sliding and it's enough premium to get you going. You just start looking at those tight ends and you'd have to really target guys that you expect to have production, right? The Pitts of the world is a struggle. Like he went at 410 here. Don't hate the pick. I think that's fine. But if you're going to go bully tight end, you want to go bully tight end with guys that are going to score fantasy points. Now, Pitts could do it this year. Like I'm a pretty big Pitts guy in terms of this season if they get that upgrade at the quarterback position. But the strategy does have flaws a little bit. All right, and the combine's going on right now. So Trey Benson just ran a 4.39. That's pretty good. Shout out Trey Benson. Shout out him there. He's an interesting guy. I wrote in the rookie guide that he was really the only running back that could have 3 down to potential. And I kind of talked about that. So him running that 4.39 is a very, very good number for him. And if you're a Trey Benson guy, that's one of those things you'd have to look at. Now, other rookies going off the board. So let's talk about him here. And as if you're watching, appreciate you. Hit that like button on YouTube if you can. Help us out with the algorithm. But, drop any questions you have. You got some Dynasty questions? You got some trade questions? Drop them in. I'll answer them today. Very chill, just Saturday, just talking a little Dynasty football with you all. So when we're looking at some rookies after Ndunze, going through the list, just kind of seeing where these guys are at. I think when you're going through, you're seeing that kind of JJ McCarthy, the 6th round range. So JJ sitting in that 6th round range there is really kind of an interesting value, right? So Matt paired him with Watson, McCarthy, and Herbert. He has a chance if he's a top 5 draft pick. If he's a top 5 guy, he's probably going in the 3rd round, 4th round, right? He's probably getting that Daniels bump because he has some rushing upside too. So I think JJ's a hard one to gauge right now. Now, JJ also could maybe slip a little bit, right? And now you're looking at a decreased value. He is probably the most volatile rookie asset right now in Superflex if you're in startups now. So you really got to believe in the talent. So the way I look at him, because you don't know what the landing spot is, my perfect landing spot for JJ McCarthy, the Vikings. Like that would be, I think he needs to sit for a year. I would love him in O'Connell's offense. I think that just having a spot to sit and learn from, a la Jordan Love, hopefully not as long as Jordan Love sat behind, but he has that ability to kind of sit, learn from, his coaching staff and all that is ideal from him. But because you have Watson and Herbert already, perfect fit because you can also sit him, right? Throw him on the taxi that we discussed on our last Dynasty episode here on the channel and just kind of let him play, right? Now, you don't think Ken Hawkins could? No, that's what I was saying. Yeah, that's what I was mentioning. I said that basically is your wide receiver too when you're thinking of that. I think so. Now, yeah, so JC just going rookies here. I don't know what his build's doing. I'm not sure. Going Josh Jacobs in the 7th round is probably just really good value. I think Jacobs, to me, is a very, very hot top target of yours that you should be trying to acquire right now if you're a win now roster. It does seem like he's probably coming back to the Raiders. At $10 to $12 million deal is what I saw recently with Saquon too. But that little crew right there, that little group, Barkley, Cook, and Jacobs, fun to go target out there in Dynasty because those guys are going to score fantasy points, right? When you're looking at the next running back, Spears, I like Spears' upside, but is he going to score fantasy points? Will he get that volume? What does that new coaching staff look like, right? There's a lot of different things to kind of take in mind there where, Spears is probably getting valued at the 110 right now in this rookie class, whereas Jacobs, I've seen him go for the 202, 203, right? So that little bit of difference in value is where I would probably lean Jacobs. And I think that I can really contend with those guys. So that's what I'm talking about with pockets. So I had this question when we were doing the Dynasty show. And where are your pockets, right? Like your groups. The one thing you should notice is that your wide receivers here, when you're looking at your wide receivers overall, there is between wide receiver. So let's go through it. After probably Garrett Wilson or Olave, you can put Garrett Wilson and Olave in there if you want, probably there. Once you get to Waddle and on probably T. Higgins. I'd love to throw JS in there, but you could probably go to Jaden Reed. So Waddle and Jaden Reed, those guys could finish anywhere. Like when you're looking at the wide receiver 8 or 9-ish, all the way to, 23, there's a lot of expectations for those guys to kind of finish in that range. So that is where you really have to look at your team builds, look at premium, maybe go tight end. Like there's a lot of different ways you can kind of go there and look through it. Now I'm on the clock, so I want to make this pick. Yeah, Jason and Flowers, in terms of value and where those guys are going. This is where I don't mind going a little bit into a little older. My team is kind of a win now team, so I don't mind kind of going Mike Evans here and just kind of looking at that. Hey, maybe he's going to get that cap. Maybe he's going to get moved, and maybe he's going to find that value somewhere else there. In terms of, hey, going to elite Kansas City, one of those teams, which I do think that he's going to be in the market. They said for about $20 million. So I think that is for me, a value play there. Hey, can I go win it? And then, you know what? The way I look at this roster, I'm okay just double tapping Mike Evans and Cooper Kupp. Going a little old there in terms of that value. Now, we got some times going on. So Estime, 4.72. He's quick, though. He makes people miss in open space at the line of scrimmage. Don't forget that. Dylan Johnson, 4.68. Not bad for Dylan there. Bucky, 4.56. So, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Isaac, 4.33. That a boy. Look at that. Corin, 4.53. That fits. That's pretty there. Ray Davis, 4.53, not bad for a 29-year-old. Isaiah Davis, all the Isaiah Davis truthers out there gonna be hurting. Yeah, I got screamed at about my Isaiah Davis dynasty ranking on the Football Guys rookie guide. But yeah, estimate day 3 back for sure. I do think he has some value though. Like, and that's the other thing with rookie running backs. I think that when you're looking at the running back position, even if it's day 3, if they do find themselves in a team that can utilize them, look at Chase Brown, right? I thought Chase Brown was a very underwhelming asset, but he found himself in a great spot. So there's always guys like that. So, I'm not going to write any guys off based on what kind of their draft capital is yet, especially that other area in terms of value, but not great. 4.72 is not great. Loving Dylan as a late round type. He's never run away from anyone. Yeah. The thing about Dylan and Dylan Johnson that I wrote in the rookie guide, he's just a very solid back. You know what I mean? Like, he's just one of those guys. I think I put on there that he can just hang around the league for a long time. And he might, like, when you're looking at where that value is at and kind of where he's going there. Man, Trey Benson going to second round, maybe. I think with his combine, at least third, right? So Trey Benson's one of those guys, very solid, can be a 3-down guy with that run and kind of where his time is at. Could be an interesting move up, depending on what a team needs in that second and third round. And I think I think the biggest thing that we have to look at is that because the salary cap raised so much, where are these teams willing to invest? So the report that I read yesterday, I think it's from The Athletic, they talked about Barkley and Jacobs at the high end, 10 to 12 million a year. And then they were looking at guys like Swift, all those free agent running backs in that middle tier at 6 million. So are you going to take Benson or some of these rookie running backs in that second to fourth round range? Or do you go give Swift 5 million or 10 million for 2 years? I don't know. I think it's an interesting discussion. I think that's going to be the fun part. Once free agency hits, we start seeing the dominoes fall, right? Seeing where guys or teams are leaning and going there. But I think that's the fun part. Yeah, pretty good value. He's old though. I mean, Ray Davis is old. But he's only back to ever score the rush for 1,000 yards for 2 different SEC teams. That's always a fun stat I like throwing out there. Oh, my boy Lloyd. Good for you. Lloyd going in there. I had Lloyd as my running back too, pre-combine on the rookie guide. I'm a big Lloyd guy. I like Lloyd. I think he fits up pretty well. Estimate is exactly the archetype of running back needs. They draft a running back every year. You know that. Yep. I think that when you're looking at the running backs, I've been mentioned this multiple times. There's going to be guys that sneak into that back end of the first, right? And Xavier Worthy coming in today, I think at 165, going to scare some people away. Some of those back end wide receivers that maybe don't test well. Wide receivers didn't have a great testing day today in terms of their weights. I don't know what they've been running at. I don't know if they have been running yet. But that's kind of be the interesting part there. But yeah, I mean, Dave, that's really the big thing. Like, whoever the Chargers draft with Roman and Harbaugh, like, these guys are all going to get bumps. We can see, we might see a 4th or 5th round Charger running back go ahead of a 3rd round guy. Me and Ryan McDowell from DLF, we did a rookie draft with landing spots determined. And that's what actually happened. We saw, me and him were looking at the player, and we love the Chargers landing spot. We love this landing spot much more than where, Benson goes. I think it was running round 3 to somewhere. I think somewhere where they had an established running back. And you just know they're going to eat into those carries. And you're just like, man, I'd rather take that mid-second or early second on a guy that I know is going to have maybe the volume and the usage and the role that I like. So we're definitely going to be seeing that for sure. Yeah, but do you think Corum is going to get in it becomes a 1st round draft pick? I just don't know if he's going to get in the second. He's small. Corum is small. Not a great pass catcher either. Yeah, maybe in terms of where Braylon Allen goes and where that's at. All right, let's look at the board. So you guys, appreciate all the comments. Keep them coming. But here we're going here. And look at that. Trey Benson going to 810. So he runs his 4.39 and boom, gets that value bump already. I love it. That's why we're doing these things. A live draft during the combine, and it changes their value as we go through here. So when you're looking at overall, I took the kind of the veteran wide receivers there. We got Kamara and Kirk and Monty. I think Monty's a great pick. I love that pick for you. I was kind of leaning there as well. Brian Thomas in the 8th round seems like a pretty good value. in terms of where he tests. I think he actually did test well today in terms of his measurements and everybody's there. Franklin going there, Dotson. Then our first rookie running back is Trey Benson. So our first rookie running back today, Trey Benson at the 8-10. Then, hey, JC's never found the young guy he doesn't love. So Will Levis going to 8-12. This is where you're getting your second tier quarterback. So that's the other thing I was going to talk about. Pockets, right? So your pockets and startups. So you really have those first tier of quarterbacks going to Williams. Then you got your second tier of quarterbacks kind of going Lawrence, probably to Purdy and Tua, probably to Tua. So, right? Then you got your kind of your unknowns. Cousins coming off the Achilles. Jaden Daniels, May, unknown rookies. Then you have your like veteran, probably can be good QB2s, Goff and Watson there. And then JJ kind of fits them there. Then after that, you're scraping the bottom, right? You're trying to figure out, okay, maybe, Bryce Young can bounce back, right? Bryce Young is going to be able to bounce back at that 6'10 spot that he gets drafted at. I don't mind taking Bryce as QB2 or 3. QB1, I'm a little bit more concerned about that. But if he can just be QB2 and you pair him with Baker Mayfield, if Chase, Robinson, Olave, and Pitts kind of break out, I think you'd be fine. I think that you'd be okay with that kind of that mindset there in terms of where you're looking at for value. But then you're looking at it, then the next pocket, that's Levis, and you see there, Stafford and Mayfield. So now you're looking at those veteran quarterbacks. Other quarterbacks still on the board, Geno Smith, Russell Wilson, Daniel Jones, Carr, Rodgers, Howell, right? So knowing when those pockets are coming and when your quarterbacks are coming. That's why really this year I've been very, aggressive with getting my second quarterback in the second round, right? And because I'm comfortable drafting probably Murray, Purdy, and Tua. I'm very comfortable, and Dak, right? If Lawrence, those guys. If those guys are my QB2, I'm very comfortable with that. Now, as you kind of look through it, so now your quarterbacks, now where you took my guy. Aaron Rodgers is a great pick there. I really like that pick by him, grabbing Isaiah Monty and Aaron Jones. So I said Aaron Rodgers, I think. Aaron Jones, the great pick in terms of where that value's at. I think that he's a pretty smash pick in terms of what he can do this season. I think that he's kind of the underrated guy, getting him in that 9th round where his value's at. So I'll just take Najee Harris, who I think is underrated as well in terms of Arthur Smith's offense. Big fan of what he's going to do in terms of that value. And then in tight end premium, I'm going to take Michael Mayer. So I'm going to look at that and just say, hey, I'll take another tight end. I think Mayer could be their wide receiver 2 on that roster. Pair him with McBride. And I have my 2 running backs in Taylor and Harris, who should be volume hogs-ish. I'm not a big Jalen Warren guy. I think he's pretty inefficient. I think Harris could be that guy that you're looking for. And then surrounded by that wide receivers and my 2 quarterbacks. So I kind of like how this team is getting built, in my opinion. As we kind of finish up the draft, I'd love for you guys to drop in the chat who you like, what team build you like. I'm going to be going over my favorite team builds as we go through there. But that's the ultimate litmus test here. Whoever takes Harris or Warren. So my guy Brew Mason takes him in the Warren right after me in the 10th. Who's gonna win that, right? They're probably gonna finish the exact same amount of fantasy points. That's usually just how these things work out. But I think it's interesting there. So Bo Nix going into that 10th round, I think is fun. I think when you're looking at that as your QB3, if you believe in him, that's not a bad pick in terms of like, hey, he could be my QB3, finds a role. Maybe someone trades into that back end of the first for him, and you find some value there. Jalen Wright going at 9-11. I don't know if anybody's watching the combine. Is anybody have Jalen Wright's 40 time? I'm kind of excited about that to see what is there. I think the fun thing I've been seeing on social media is people just realizing Jalen Wright's a running back. So that's pretty cool after we had him at running back 1 for the football guide. And it's been fun seeing him like plug in people's metrics all of a sudden. Jonathan Brooks, 1007. So we got Brooks there. Stevenson at 1008. Again, the thing I love about Matt's build, and this is why I like doing these, win now roster. Look at that bad boy. Like that is a win now. If you're looking for a win now team and how like he's really going for it this year, right? Really where it's going to matter is Hill McCaffrey. Now, I'd be interested to see what his next few picks are if we were going a little deeper. I don't mind. Like, I'd love to see maybe where he kind of shoots for some upside, because when you go that win now, you're really capping yourself with moves you can make in the future, right? Like McCaffrey and Hill are definitely off their age cliffs. Like you're not going to get their value back. As soon as you draft them, it's like buying a car and driving off the lot. They're used, right? And these guys are used. Kind of Watson, hey, you got to make sure if he can bounce back. Andrew, same thing. Debo and Johnson and Allen and Stevenson, again, still on that mindset of kind of being that older area there. So that's what I think is interesting about their build. I think it's a lot of fun. That's why we do it. but definitely going to be in there. When you're thinking of, yeah, I don't mind that. When you're looking at what you did there, I think that if Bo Nix can kind of be that back in round one QB, and then you're looking at like Wright, if he can be that, I mean, they're gonna compare him to Kamara anyway. You're just having a mentor. That's what you're doing there with Kamara in there. 4.44. Maybe he'll run the second one a little faster. That's not ideal. All right. We got, oh, look at you, JC, grabbing Marshawn Lloyd and then Lad McConkey. That he loves Lad McConkey. So that's kind of where the rookies are going there. I think another interesting fall, maybe in terms of value in ADP, George Pickens going in the 10th round behind Jameson Williams, Marquise Brown and those guys. I think the question mark with Pickens is, can you trust Pickens to draft Pickens and have a week in, week out fantasy player, right? Points per game and all of that. Like, you struggle with that. He's a best ball guy, which I think is funny. One thing that I always think is funny is in drafts, or in content that I listen to, well, he's a better best ball player. So as everybody, like, everybody's a good best ball pick because, you don't have to make the decision to plug him in or not, right? Like, that's pretty, it's really comical when I hear that. Like, Pickens to me is, you struggle to start him week in and week out, right? Now, if they get a QB upgrade, I'll probably be in a little bit on Pickens there. And that's where he's going. Yeah, I know you took Lad for the laughs there, and he's going at 112, 111 in rookie drafts. And then if you compare that to this in the 11th round, yeah, definitely value. I mean, you're looking at another value. I love Brian Robinson there in the 11th. I think that's a lot of fun there. When you're looking at Benson's RAS, 9.78, not bad in terms of what he's looking for. He's doing himself. He's winning he's earning some money. Trey Benson is earning himself some money there with the combine, and you have to love to see that, especially for some of these running backs. Roman Wilson sitting at 1106. A lot of fun there in terms of Rome. When you're going into these drafts too, I think it's fun to pivot. I'm going to be going through some builds here in a minute once I kind of finish out my picks of the ones I like. I can just talk about my build. I really like how this build kind of set itself. I get Allen and Murray has the upside to be like a top 5 guy there. McBride and Mayer, I think, can be very solid and tight end premium. Then Taylor and Harris. I like having Taylor as my anchor. Harris is kind of that fill-in guy for the volume and maybe the touchdown upside. I get that proven production in Evans and Kupp, and I get some young guys that I think could maybe elevate themselves, right? There's a world where Evans and Kupp are wide receiver ones this year, right? And there's a world where JSN and Flowers are definitely solid floor wide receiver 2s. And I think that's pretty good value in that chance. We're going to have our first auto. We almost made it the whole draft without an auto pick. We almost made it. I think that might have been, though. I think that might have been queued up. We're going to say it's queued up. Yeah, but that fits for Blake. I don't think that, the thing about the combine, they say don't double count, all that crap. I didn't think Blake was going to test very well athletically. I think what you get with Blake is his ability to make people miss the line of scrimmage, the guy that plugs in and just scores touchdowns, those type of things, right? I don't think that, when you're looking at Blake, you were expecting, over 7. I think if some people were, I think that was a mistake in terms of that value. Now, going in here into this round, the last 2 picks here of guys that I kind of will look at and say, okay, where am I going to plug and play? For me, I do like having, I don't necessarily need that third quarterback. Best quarterbacks on the board at this point in this last 2 rounds here. Daniel Jones, Carr, Rodgers, Howe, Pickett, Ritter. None of those guys really stand out to me. Tight end perspective, not in love with any of those guys there in terms of who's still on the board. So, for me, it's running backs. I'm going to take another running back here just to kind of sure up, hey, who can kind of give me the value in that range. I'm going to actually draft Chase Brown or Hubbard is sitting there too. I like that guy there. From a wide receiver perspective, going through the list and who's on the board there, I'm going to go kind of weird, and I don't really necessarily love this guy very much, but people do. So why not? We'd have some fun. I'll take Rondale Robinson in terms of my pick in that round, there. Now, you'd expect Corms and Jody to look good, though. It needs to. Like, Corms agility needs to. Like, that is, I think, where the 3-cone, all of that things, he's going to have to do well there. If he can get that explosiveness and that lateral agility, he'll be just fine. But if he doesn't test well there, that's part of it. Penix doesn't intrigue me very much. I'm kind of out on him. Now, yeah, sorry. I had to snipe you in the 12th round. That's how we do things here. But when you're looking at the board too, so looking at the builds and going through it, I think it's interesting to see kind of where the values are. If you're gonna go zero running back, so there's definitely some guys in this draft that kind of go zero running back. And we're gonna get into that, but there's definitely some targets late. Connor, Henry, right? Warren and Pollard possibly. Aaron Jones, I think Monty and those guys are really fun to kind of grab late there. Brian Robinson is the most hated on running back out there in terms of production. Now, I know he has a new team. A new offensive coordinator. I don't necessarily love Kingsbury, but sitting at the 1105, the value that you could possibly get there at the 1105, and production wise, not a bad running back too. If he's your running back too there. And then, if you're going to go young, you get Corm, you get White. I think Zamir White is the interesting one in terms of where that value is at. If Jacobs doesn't come back, does Zamir just instantly become the starter? He looked good down the stretch in the games that Jacobs wasn't there. I think that's more of an outlier thing than anything, but in 12th round, this is where you start taking shots on those backup guys. They have production out there. That's not bad. The other thing to note too, I think in tight end premium, when you're looking at the board, not a ton of tight ends gone off the board. Right. So I think when you're thinking of I think it's 14 tight ends. I did that math really fast in my head. So up to Freiermuth, I think there's about 14 tight ends. There is value to be had at that position. Right. I think that there are guys still on the board that you could really kind of target. If we're looking at tight ends still on the board there, Cole Kmet is out there. Musgrave, Schultz, possibly Dolchitz, if he come back healthy, likely Otten, guys like that obviously are still there. Ferguson, is Ferguson already gone? Yeah. So 707 is a pretty upside ceiling play there. But again, when you're looking at the tight end and tight end premium, definitely some guys later. So if you want to maybe wait on tight ends, and grab someone late, you're looking at kind of that second tier, right? So, Freiermuth possibly in there, or you take a middle guy like Ferguson, hopes he hits a ceiling, and then you draft one of those other tight ends in that range. I think that's a pretty good value. Now, I want to go through some of these picks. And if you have some questions there, they have to. They're going to have to add somebody. Yeah, that's the thing with Kmet. I don't know. I think that, so someone asked me to do a little writing for them in terms of their article. Sam Wise, I think his name is, and a really nice guy. And he was talking about Kmet. I haven't read the article yet. I think that if you think that the Bears are going to add another piece, a wide receiver, and Caleb's there, maybe they're going to push the ball downfield more. So in terms of, not a lot of dump offs, not what Fields was doing. Waldron there, though, is a kicker because he loves tight ends. And I think if he has a guy like Cole Kmet, he's definitely going to utilize him in different ways. So I think the question is with Moore, whoever they add the wide receiver position, and then Kmet, will he be fantasy relevant? But if he hasn't get drafted in the 12th round in tight end premium, I would argue, yeah, he possibly could be, right? So I think that is the question there. Kendall Milton's, hey, that's my sleeper, man. We got made fun of a lot about Kendall Milton back in the day. If he can just stay healthy, the man is not a bad player. When you're looking at what he's been able to do in his limited time out there. Now, I am definitely a homer on Kendall Milton because I watched him play in high school out here in Fresno. But if he stays healthy, he's going to roll around. I don't remember who my comp for Kendall Milton is. I know it's bad because I wrote the whole damn thing. But wherever my comp for Kendall Milton is, I can't think off the top of my head for the Football Guys Guide. In terms of just that guy that probably can score points, right? When you're looking at just he's going to be a bumper, red zone guy, kind of has that ability to kind of has a good agility, but definitely limited upside based on his knees. But if you get him in the 3rd or 4th round of rookie drafts, I love that. Yeah, I know he did. I know he finished tight end 7 and 8, in terms of tight end scoring for tight end premium. Cole Kmet is that guy that, it's funny because everybody loved Cole Kmet back in the day. And then now everybody's like, man, is he getting drafted too high? But not based on this. When you're looking at just the value, I mean, there's certainly you can make some deals maybe for Kmet out there. And you're looking at that. So rounding up the board here, Hubbard's the last pick. We got JC's going to pick it off. Finish it off here. And then we're going to talk about this. But in the comments, why don't you whose team do you like the best? So remember, 12-team Superflex, tight end premium. Whose team do you like the best in this? He just took Cole Kmet because we were talking about him. But I want to talk through some builds. So, I already kind of talked about mine. Excuse me. I like that build in terms of that, so I'm not going to talk about that. But let's go through Jay's. So really heavy wide receiver build, right? Love Harrison, Wilson, London. I love London in 4th, 5th round. I actually got London as my wide receiver 1 in a draft, and I think it was round 5. You know what? I'll take that all day in terms of where his value is at. Tank Dell, I think is fun, right? So building around that. Then you got Barkley and Cook. I think those are 2 very solid running backs in that format. And Hubbard late. That's an interesting pick. I think Hubbard is one of those guys that if you're going to go 0 running back or late round running back, you're looking for a guy that could have that volume in Canale's offense, right? The former Bucs offensive coordinator. Look what he just did with Rashad Wright. Now, they might add some weapons there, but Hubbard is fun. Hubbard is a fun pick in terms of, looking for that sleeper guy, that value guy in that range. Then let's talk about the quarterbacks. Kendall Milton comp says, yeah, that's not a bad comp, right? Hassan Haskins. I don't mind that comp. I'm a big Hassan guy, though, as you guys know. Now, quarterbacks. This is what happens. So you wait. You have a really solid pieces there, and then you go Stafford, Wilson, Geno. I don't hate those quarterbacks for this year, possibly next year, right? Russell is the hard one because, where is he going to land up? Geno, I think he's got 1 more year left. Stafford, 2-ish, possibly. So you really hope you hit those ceiling guys for your wide receivers. Those guys really pop off there, right? And Garrett Wilson has that bounce back here. London could be that guy. Harrison and Lamb and those guys. That's the question. And I think that's what we see here. Yeah, might have 0 quarterbacks in 2025. So this is the danger. But this is why we show you guys kind of where that value is at in terms of if you go heavy wide receivers and in running backs and you wait on those quarterbacks, right? Right after Bryce, or even with Bryce, you're really looking at quarterbacks you don't necessarily love, right? And we kind of went over that already. When you're looking at after Bryce here, we're thinking Bryce is in that range of where that value is at. After that, you're really Will Levis, Stafford, Mayfield in that range. So that is the concern when you go there. So that I think that's just a fun build. That's an interesting build in terms of what that is. I want to look at Dustin's build because he kind of had the same strategy as me a little bit. He waited on second quarterback, though. So he got Brees. He took Brees Hall there, 204. Then he got his tight end, Laporta. Tight end 1, fantasy, tight end premium. A lot of fun there. Then you got more Goff. Now, Goff is that pretty – I love that Ben Johnson's coming back. For this year, I was a little bit worried as Dynasty manager, if someone who has Goff in a couple of leagues as my QB2, if Ben Johnson was leaving, I'd be a little bit more concerned. But having him there with Richardson's upside – I think it's fun. It gives you a lot of versatility in your lineup. Hall, Laporta could be the run. I mean, literally Hall, Laporta, running back 1 and tight end 1 possible outcomes. I think Richardson has a possible top 3 outcome in quarterbacks in terms of fantasy, right? Then you have Moore, who was very solid last year, gets a quarterback upgrade possibly with Caleb Williams. This was a fun build. Now, he went kind of young-ish with Downs and Dotson and Wicks and those guys. Don't necessarily love all those guys in that range. But this is a fun build. If you're going to wait on that second quarterback, but go that mid-tier, I think he did a good thing by drafting Laporta there in that range. Try to punt the QB, fun little strategy with nerve-wracking. Yeah, you could. And that's the other thing, too. When you're looking at, you could flip. Definitely, all those guys are going to hold their value, right? I think, Harrison will probably hold his value there. Lamb, definitely. Wilson, I think it actually shoots up in value. Like, if he comes out, Aaron Rodgers comes back, and he does have that good year, you could see him going to 205 where Tyreek's at. London definitely could exceed his value, and so can Tank. All those guys are able to do that to where you can go. And I do think that there is a strategy. So if you wait on that QB, that QB1, there is always opportunity to buy some of these veteran QBs. Look at what people, I think Baker was getting moved for like a third at one point, seconds. Like, there's guys that if you are in position to compete and going for it, there's always quarterbacks you can buy for cheap, right? And even though you have 3 of the quarterbacks that would probably get bought for cheap, there's always still guys that you can definitely go out there and target and go through. Now, when we're looking at, I wanted to kind of go through his team because I really like it. I really like Bruce's team here. Hurts and Tua, very solid in terms of just, hey, Hurts has that top 5 upside. Tua gets slept on out there by a lot of fantasy managers because they don't like him as a quarterback. But from a fantasy perspective, he's in the perfect offense, and he's going to get a contract. They're not going to get anybody else. He's going to be there with these weapons. Tua is a very solid QB2 for the next 3 years, right? Pairing him with Gibbs, that anchor running back kind of strategy. I love that. I think Gibbs is pass catching upside. I think he can be their wide receiver 2 next year or 3 / right? With Laporta to be in there. Nico, Higgins, and Diggs, fine, that's solid. I don't hate that. The only thing that would make me not like that is if they do go take a wide receiver in the draft, or they go get Mike Evans, right? Houston. But if not, hey, you're sitting there with very solid wide receiver 1 for CJ Stroud. Higgins and Diggs are fine. I think Diggs is one of those guys, if you feel like he's fallen off the face of the planet, you're not going to draft him. But if you think he's got one good year left, you're excited about that. Goddard, Kirk, and Watson, very solid, safe floor picks. I think Kirk is still a value out there. I think him and Lawrence are still very solid together. Remember, Kirk got a little banged up when you're looking at that. I think that when he comes back, you're still looking at that very solid PPR option. And you kind of late round running backs. I think Pollard's going to get a contract somewhere where we like. If Pollard can go, and as a Cowboy fan, I've watched Tony Pollard, and I was never a truther, but I did see that he did have value as that running back 2, that lightning. If he can be that, where he had Zeke on the other side, that's a fine pick, right? And Freiermuth late, Freiermuth is fine. 12th round is a very good value there. All right, let's get into some of these. Wow, Gerondo. I definitely probably didn't talk about Gerondo very. I think I did talk about Gerondo high, not necessarily highly, but I'm trying to remember what I said about him in the get draft guide. I did say he was like lightning in a bottle. I'm pretty sure I said that about Gerondo. I know. Let me see what his ranking was last night. This is a terrible podcast or a terrible show. Might be just talking you guys out. Where did I have Gerondo? I have him at 22. So let me see what I talked about with Gerondo just to see where he was at. I said Gerondo will need a system, doesn't require him to move laterally. He's a straight north-south scheme. Short yardage back, rotational. Man, that's pretty crazy that he tested that well. That is crazy that Gerondo tested that well. Maybe I was a little off on him. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard. 4.38. I like that score better for Jalen Wright. At a 4.38, I will take that overall. Much better there. So this is kind of like, when we're talking about this, I appreciate you guys hopping in here. Again, Mahomes, Fields, Pittman, how comfortable do you feel at Pittman being your wide receiver 1? I think is the question on this team. But I do like the fact that you can have double tap that tight end position there in terms of that. The other one, I think this is an interesting, fun team too. You got Stroud, Puka, and then Purdy. Again, I think Purdy is a very underrated quarterback in terms of fantasy for this next year. I don't think they're moving on from him, right? Then you get Bowers and Williams. Williams, I guarantee you he's going to have that same volume that we've seen. They probably add somebody, but he could still get that volume. But having him and Puka, are you concerned about that, right? If Kupp comes back pretty healthy, may limit the upside to both those guys, reality-wise. But if he doesn't, and we've seen wide receivers not be able to stay healthy after that 30 years, I think that Kyron is a safer play there. Reed and Franklin McLaurin are fun. I think Scary Terry in the 9th is fun in that offense. He could be a target out there. And it's just funny when you're looking at just like who he's going around, Marquise Brown, Keenan Allen's in that range, Deontay Johnson, those guys. Terry might have a safe floor. I will say, though, Terry McLaurin is one of the most frustrating dynasty assets to hold, or just fantasy assets. Just plugging him in your lineup. Last year, he frustrated the hell out of me in terms of just having to plug him week in, week out there. If you're a truther for that, and we didn't really see the upside with him and Richardson yet, right? And if you believe in Richardson and you think that he can kind of elevate Pittman, I'm all aboard that. If you think he can be a wide receiver 1, that's fine. I think that with the format, the way you drafted was fine too. All right, so that is the picks. Looking at JC Dynasty over here. I like this because it's really a productive struggle build, which I enjoy, and we did talk about on the last show, so I do want to break it down. Caleb Amon-Ra Neighbors is exactly what you do in a productive struggle. Then you get Drake, and if those two hit their ceilings, you're excited about that. I will say in one league that I was in last year, it was a 14-team league, so I double tapped Stroud and Bryce. Not excited about the Bryce one, but the Stroud one it worked for me, right? Then you get Odunze and Worthy. So you're really going wide receiver heavy. And then Jacobs, Levis, Williams, Lloyd, McConkey. So this is one of those ones where you're really hoping for ceiling. But this is a productive struggle build, right? Next year, he puts himself in position with Luther, Tet McMillan, Evan Stewart, those guys from the wide receiver spot too, if you really want to go build to that wide receiver spot. Or maybe Shador Sanders balls out and he goes there. And that kind of be in there. But I do have a little bit more time, a couple minutes before I got to get out of here. If you have some dynasty questions or some trade questions or anything, about the anything Dynasty related. If you got anything, you could drop it right now. As always, think about joining our Discord. We are just, it's the Devil Royale Discord. You can jump in. If you want to just jump in the Discord, it's $1 a month. That's it. With the Patreon, we do our combined rankings. We have a bunch of different stuff. What we're trying to do, Jeremy Johnson does, and Jay Stein, they do a podcast for us every week. Every couple of weeks, prospect breakdowns. We do on there. We have our combined rankings, which is every prospect from freshman, even the freshman, incoming freshman now, Dylan Raiola, all of those guys, to everybody in Dynasty, right? All the guys you see on the screen here. We do combined rankings. We do Devy rankings, all of that. You get it for $5. Check out the Patreon. It's one of those things that I think is pretty good value there as we go through. So I appreciate you guys watching. I'm going to be trying to do these more every Saturday-ish, trying to jump on here, talking to you guys about a little Dynasty. So appreciate you guys. I will check you guys next week.